Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Stephen, Rashbi, Rab Shmuel Ben Yehoshua, once again with you. And even though I'm with you here in spirit, if you will, and with you in our wonderful synagogue, Temple Shalom of Ontario, I will not be with you this weekend. My wife and I, the Rebbitzin, will be traveling to North Carolina. This is the weekend we do this to attend the wedding of my niece and her fiance. Looking forward to it. I am going to miss you. Please keep the faith, participate in the service, and I will be here in spirit. So, hope you're doing well. We are quickly coming upon the new year, the Rosh Hashanah. Now, we've talked about how the month of Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year, is actually the seventh month of the actual year. The first month being the month of Aviv, as it's described in the Torah, and that is the month of Nisan, which is what it's called now. And that is when Moses escorted and led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of the bondage, the captivity, and started the trek toward the promised land. So we become the people of the Torah. So, seventh month, seven is the number of completion. The seven, in terms of time, appears very frequently in our. I'm really hesitant to call it a religion. I know it is. We all know it's a religion, but it's so much more. When you look at the tenets of the Torah, yes, there's some very spiritual commandments about dealing with God and, offerings and how you behave. But there's also a lot of social commandments, how we interact with each other, what we do. Now, this particular portion, actually, I will submit to you, is both, but it's more spiritual. Now, this particular portion, even though it talks about the first fruits, the bikurim, so the idea is to be grateful that we have the land's bounty. And we all know that on a very material, physical, real level, the way you get your first fruits is by working. You go out to the field, you plant the seed, you water it, you nurture it, give it whatever nourishment the ground needs to produce your yield, to produce your crop, whatever it is you're growing, be it grain, like barley, wheat, whatever, be it vegetables, like squash, gourds, things like that, legumes, beans, whatever. Or if you happen to be an animal herder, cattle, sheep, goats, oxen, whatever it is you're raising, what are the first fruits? It's, when the first born. And it talks about the gratitude involves separating, 10% of that and giving it to the Kohanim, the Levites, the priests, the ministers, and also, the tithe for the poor. So that's kind of how we show gratitude for the bounty, because two people may put in the same effort, right? And they get different results. So really, it's really kind of up to Hashem how successful we really are, because there are certain things we can control and there are certain things that we can't control. Now, in modern business, they say, well, if you do this, this, and this, you'll be successful. Well, yes and no. Okay. It depends on how hard you're working. It depends on your market. It depends on your product. It depends on yourself. Okay. You see when I appear before you, wearing a dress shirt, wearing a tie, groomed, right? If I were to walk in disheveled in a sweatshirt, my hair all a mess, you'd be like, who is this guy? What does he know? I may be brilliant. I may be so busy that, studying Torah and Talmud and whatever, and the prophets and the Zohar and Kabbalah, that I just don't have time to keep myself up, right? But, we certainly have that image, and that's how people react to us. That's one of the reasons that if you have a priest that has a visible defect, that priest is not do the offerings. They do not participate in that because where's your attention going to be? It's not going to be on the offering. It's going to be on, what is that above his, whatever, right? I mean, that's the way we are. We're humans. So, spirit. So we need to have that connection with God because it is ultimately our fate is in the hands of Hashem. Now, I'm not going to get into a discussion on, why some people, whatever. Okay, that's kind of beyond a lot of us. I mean, we can certainly gander at why, how those things happen, but really, ultimately, it's up to Hashem. Having said that, this is a very key chapter in addressing those concerns because this is one of the places, and there's the other ones in Leviticus, that has something called the Tochacha, which has been getting out of breath here. I'm getting excited about talking about Torah. Um, it's been interpreted or translated as warning, reproach, and it kind of has a little bit of both. Both. It's a warning, and it's also saying if you do this, or more to the point, if you do not do this is what's going to happen. And the Tochacha, when it is read in the synagogue, it is one aliyah. Now you're thinking, okay, it's an aliyah. Great. What does that mean? Okay, it's one aliyah. It's 55 verses. Most of our aliyot go from 3, which is the minimum. And again, that's why when somebody's up there reading and the rest of us, are being the gabbai and we're following the person reading and correcting when they do, because you have to hear exactly what's in the Torah. When they come to the end of a pasuk, of a verse, we're like, Elohi, whatever. We're like making a little, melody with them. So that that's the end of the verse. And that during that reading, there's been at least 3 verses read. So here we have the Tochacha. That's 55 verses. Usually a aliyah can go from 3. Remember we did the 10 Commandments. That was a little bit more. That was like maybe 15, 20 verses, right? I don't remember offhand. And the way these aliyot are set up is typically, they divide it where you have a place where you can divide it, where it makes sense, where you're kind of in a break, like on a TV show, you've got a commercial, think that way. So the Tochacha is actually maybe 5 verses where it says if you obey the commandments and do what you're supposed to do and, respect Hashem, then everything will work out. And now Moses and Hashem felt the need to go on for 55 verses to tell you what happens when you don't. And it's not just ignoring the commandments. It gets pretty bad, okay? Because when you are a Jew, and you settle in a foreign land, even when you have foreign neighbors around you, it can be very tempting to investigate, to be enthralled, to be curious about some of their practices. A lot of the ancients, and let's put this into context, a lot of the ancients basically, their religious, quote unquote, practices were very pagan, which meant it represented things that didn't have to do with God. It had to do with material things, it had to do with natural forces. The biggest offense was, don't pass your child through fire for Moloch. What does that mean? It means no, they've tried to temper it a little bit, but basically, in my mind, and I think a lot of other rabbis and sages' mind, it basically refers to child sacrifice. Can you imagine? I'm gonna burn my young daughter, so that my crops grow. That's absurd. And you think, okay, well, that's kind of a given. Okay, but there's a lot of religions that had temple prostitutes. Some people like, really, it was, put it out of your mind what you're thinking. Okay, it was vulgar. Look at the Romans and the Greeks. Look at that. Look at them as an example. They ate and drank to excess. They had vomitoriums, right, where they can go back and eat again. Again, you have a body, you need nourishment so you can continue. Yeah, it's nice when the food tastes good. That's part of the idea. But I mean, to worship food like that, you just keep going on and eating and eating and eating. And have these orgies of food. These orgies of lust. That's why we've been led. That's why in the last portion it talked about, okay, you're a soldier, you're out there, you're in battle, you see a woman of beautiful form, and you want to take her as your wife. Some responsibilities come with, and giving into your primal urges, right? And that's what the Tochacha basically says. If you ignore the commandments, if you start doing what other pagans do, guess what? Game over. So I would encourage you to look at it. It can be very troubling. It can be very frightening. They go into just, the Torah will do this. The Talmud will do this. They will go into graphic detail about what the consequences are. And they leave no stone unturned when they're discussing how to behave, how to take care of yourself, right? So, okay, well, I'm not going to leave you with that. It ends, pretty promising. Portions do that. They don't leave you hanging with some dismal, dire, you know, prediction, but rather things will work out. Just remember, yeah, that may happen, but you're smart people. You may be stiff necked, but you know what you're doing. You're going to come back. We know this. You're going to see the error of your ways. That's why we have Yom Kippur coming up too. So you're good people. You're better than this. That's the idea. Okay. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. We look forward to seeing you around. Have a great weekend. See you when I get back, and we'll start the high holidays. It'll be great. Cantor guest will be with us.